time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Packer Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight in the middle of April, and that means one thing: it is turkey time.
It is turkey season about to begin in Michigan, right? I tell you what, it's about that time. Birds are out there strutting away. People are out scouting, looking around, doing their thing. Other states have already started on us, so I've seen some people scoring some birds. That's good to see.
Tim Andrus from Rush Outdoors, he was out.
He smacked one.
Was he out west?
Yes, he was out west, and
okay.
He got one right off the bat. And then he did some. He had some extra time on his hands, so he did a little shed hunting and found some sheds with some nice racks. So
there you
pretty
go.
Good, yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Tammy's in the cabin tonight. Mark Coleman's with us, Pat Hill, Tom Gensel, and a couple other people that I can't see the name on just yet. So they're starting to pile in, talking turkey type.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, it's a good night to talk turkey, right?
Well, before we get going, let's take care of the people who take care of us.
Absolutely. Hey, it's that time of year, whether it be turkey season or you're out thinking about bear coming up in the fall, or you're starting to think about deer.
Absolutely.
Get over to Buck Baits. Check out buckbaits.com. If you get when you check out with your order at buckbaits.com, use the promo code UNJ20. You'll get 20% off your there. We've talked to Robbie Pruitt over at Antler King. Big good friend of his. Lincoln Roan with Packer Max. Good friend of ours. If you want to save $25, get over there. Give Lincoln a call. Get your Packer Max. Best thing you could ever invest in. The best part, you need to do that for your solid food plot. UNJ25 at packermax.com. Game calls. We're going to be talking calls tonight. If you're talking turkey, if you want to talk some small game, you want to talk deer, the Omni Series, get over to JPO Game Calls. Use the promo code UNJ10. You get 10% off your order there. I tell you what, folks, the Island Armory. I was there today, matter of fact, and what a mistake.
You didn't take enough money.
You have no idea. Go check out their website. It's constantly changing. They're constantly updating. And if you use the promo code UNJ10, you get 10% off your order when you check out over at theislandarmory.com. And last but not least, deercampcoffee.com. Use the promo code UNJ10. You'll get 10% off your order there. And tonight, that's right, folks, he is trying it for the first time, Buckzilla Vanilla. What do you think about that?
Right now, it's roasting hot. I gotta let it cool just a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll come back for an update. But also, when you're checking out the website, get a bag of Up North Journal coffee. Help us out.
Nice medium roast. You can't go wrong, I'll tell you what.
Right? And if you come over to my screen,
okay.
We can check out up in Newberry. It's rainy, which not surprising because it's rainy here, and it's 42 degrees. Get over there to Cedars, get a pizza, and get some Deer Camp coffee while you're there as well.
And there's no snow on the ground in
Newberry,
Michigan.
It's all gone. It looks wet, though, just like here.
That's right. All right, well, let's just jump into it tonight. We have got a special guest on tonight that is he a turkey expert or the turkey whisperer?
I want to go with turkey whisperer.
Okay. Dan Prince, welcome to the show tonight, Mr. Turkey Whisperer. I guess that's what we're going to call you tonight.
Hey, well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you in the cabin tonight with us. So, for those of you who may know Dan, might recognize him from a seminar over at Williams Gun Sight. Was that last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah.
Give a turkey seminar over there. And actually, Dan, you've been giving them over there for quite a while, haven't you?
I want to say it's probably, if not 10, close to it.
Okay. There's been
close
a few.
To it.
Been a few seminars.
Yeah. Yep. So that's been with the Flint River chapter with NWTF.
Nice. Well, we appreciate you doing that for them. A little bit of background on you, Dan. You're retired conservation officer here in the state of Michigan. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And how long were you a CO?
So I was with Department of Natural Resources 23 years of my 25-year law enforcement career.
Nice. Well, thank you for your service, sir.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
I spent almost all my time Livingston County. I was up north for a year. So it was good. But yeah, so being retired and I'm got another job, so here we are.
So when you say up north were you?
So I was just south of Cadillac. I was Osceola County.
Okay, cool.
Yep, Tustin, Reed City.
Familiar with that area. We had a place over, just off of Everhead there at M66 and US 10 by the Muskegon River there.
Yeah, real nice area.
Yeah, that's where I cut my hunting teeth probably in my early to mid 20s. So a couple of years ago. Let's just leave it at that. So we want to talk some turkey tonight. So obviously, being a CEO, you're in the outdoors. You love animals and critters and everything that goes along with that. But what drew? Let's get a little background on you. What drew you to turkey hunting? How did you get involved in it?
So I want to say this all started for me about 1977. I'm kind of dating myself there. So my dad was a fisheries and wildlife professor at Michigan State for 36 years. He's retired, and his specialty was upland game birds and waterfowl and then wetland ecosystems. So he always made it a real point to take us, and we started turkey hunting in Mayo. And when they did the lottery system, and so it was a big deal to get a tag and go. But that year, so I actually started hunting in the early 80s. And my dad, 1977, I want to say they shot their first birds that year.
Okay.
And I was actually in second grade in elementary school, and it was such a big deal. He drove to the school and knocked on the window of the school of my classroom, and our whole class came out and looked at these birds. And my dad and a coworker were still in their camouflage and showed us these birds, and I was like, wow, that is really cool. So at that moment, I probably was hooked at that particular moment. It was obviously memorable because I'm still talking about it.
Yeah, there you go. It's so memorable that a dead bird got you excited to get out there and get one of your own.
Oh, yeah,
so
for sure.
Back at that time, is that about the time they really started the restoration project here in Michigan with the wild turkeys?
I would say the big push on that was probably the 80s through the 90s was the real big push on that. Okay. And so my dad actually had a little bit of input in that with Department of Natural Resources, because I remember him doing some studies on birds, and I would actually take my calls over to this research area and call to these live birds. And they would gobble and do all their turkey stuff, but they were in pens. They're wild birds. But yeah, just really interesting.
So that's the only time that you could really call to a wild bird without giving up the game. I mean, because we always say don't call to a wild bird, but but you had your own audience, captive audience.
Yeah. I mean, I would go over there every chance I got. Every time he would say he was going over there, I would jump in and bring my calls, and yeah, it was fun.
Wow, that is cool. I did not know that about you.
Hence Turkey Whisperer.
There you go. Yeah, see?
Right?
The calls have come so far. I mean, from back then. I mean, I'll show some of my original calls. I still have a lot of them, but the calls are so amazing now, the technology they put into them.
I was just about to ask you, from those days back then to now, as you oversee all those years, just a couple, the technology, isn't it amazing?
Oh yeah, well, and even the tactics. I mean, back then it was real conservative. My dad was still. I mean, I'll tell some stories where he's still today. 3 yelps, you quit. 3 yelps, you quit. And it's just not that way. I mean, but back then that was a lot of it. I mean, it was, when we were up in Mayo, it was. I mean, we would hear turkeys, but it took a few years to actually get one on the ground up there.
Wow. I remember when I first started, I want to say it was like the late 90s, and it was tough. I mean, we didn't see many birds. Like you said,
yeah.
It was just, they were kind of getting into it, and now you can't drive around the corner, just out of the edge of any town, and you see a fieldful. It's crazy.
It is such a success story for our state.
Well, we got you on tonight to talk about turkey hunting. So let's just jump into it. Dan,
where do you want to start?
Yeah, what do you want to start with?
So hunters usually want to know about a few things. They want to know how to start a hunt. They want to know about the firearms shot, what's best, what guns are best, and then obviously everybody wants to know about calling. Hey, what do you use for a call? How do you call in this situation? Mm-hmm. And we'll cover that. But I guess I would like to start in scouting.
Okay.
And Dan, if you want to pull this turkey sign up, and then I'll just review just a little bit about scouting because it's so important. Right now, you should be out scouting. I scout all year. When I was a conservation officer running on different calls around my county, it was really easy to scout because I was always going to something or going to go talk to somebody or do something. So it was really easy to scout, but you do have to make an effort to go out and scout. Once you get on the property, guys or hunters will say, well, what's good turkey hunting property? I always equate it to, if it's good deer hunting property, it usually is going to be good turkey hunting. They kind of coincide. I mean, usually you think wetlands, waterfowl, you think deer, hardwoods, succession areas. But yeah, so you should be out scouting, get a place to hunt, get that established. I actually scouted this last weekend, and what you're looking for is you're looking for turkey sign. And anytime you find sign, you're in the money. So here are a couple examples of wing feathers. If you find, so a turkey has about 5,000 to 6,000 feathers.
Wow.
And these are wing feathers. And if you notice this one on the left here, it's got a broken tip. And that is on a gobbler, male turkey. And he is dragging the tip of the feather while he's in strut, and so it's dragging and it's damaging the feather. It doesn't hurt anything as far as his flight, but it does give you a very good indication of what you're looking at. So that right there is a feather that is from a dominant bird. Another thing you kind of want to look for is when you're out and about is droppings. And I'll just hold these up. I don't know if you can see these real well, but if you look,
hold them up just a little bit higher.
There you go.
Okay, so if you look at these, the one here is for, this is a gobbler, and a gobbler dropping will be a J-shaped or cigar. So a fish hook or a cigar. And the bigger the dropping, better you're looking at shooting a good bird in that area. This smaller dropping is shaped like a snail, and that's for a female or a hen. So you look for turkey droppings. Anytime you see droppings, that's a good spot to set up. Another thing you're looking for is turkey scratches, and that's where they're feeding. So turkey, as it feeds, it'll claw the ground with its foot, looking for nuts and insects and seeds, roots. They eat all sorts of things. When I shoot a bird, a lot of times I will look at the crop to see what it's eating, and that'll tell you, hey, you might want to hunt near this area where this bird is probably getting this food. Another really good indication are the scratchings. And I also, Dan, there's a picture of some scratchings in our...
we got it up right now. I got the picture up right now of some scratchings that you sent us.
Yeah. And so if you look at that picture, that actually was a road, a ridge along a two track, and those birds were, and I had actually watched them scratch along that. And I was actually in my work truck and decided, wow, I got to take a picture of that.
So when they're scratching like that, what are they going after? What are they looking for that they're needing to scratch?
So, I mean, a wild turkey will forage on nuts, seeds, insects. So he's looking underneath the leaves for anything juicy that he can see either moving, or it's acorn, or if he's near a grain field, corn, soybeans. I mean, you name it, they will find it and ingest it. So that is what you're looking for, and that's what he's looking for, or the birds are. Another thing that I like to point out, if you look at this breast feather that I'm holding up, and you see that black band, the iridescent color, and then the dark black band on the very top, that is a male. That's a gobbler. And then here is the hen. And if you look at this feather, you see a buff color or a rust brown color at the tip, and so you know that's a hen. So anytime you see feathers, you can a lot of times ID the sex by the feather. When I was a game warden, made numerous cases for people shooting turkeys either out of season or with the wrong caliber weapon, and turkeys leave a lot of sign when they get hit.
People would not do that, would they?
When you say they have about
Never.
When you say
Never.
they have about 5,000 feathers, I'm sure there's quite a crime scene can happen.
Exactly, and so we would take photos of those, and then you could use that as evidence. So beyond hunting, I mean, you can use that, I mean, as kind of a forensic. I mean, in my old job, that's what we would do. We would use that as identification, because one time a bird was actually went to the actual kill location, gathered up evidence, and then actually had to go to the house, and the bird was already processed, and then had to identify it by its characteristics as a wild turkey versus a butterball. So
it wasn't wrapped in plastic; it was a little net around.
Didn't come a handle.
No, and they do look different plucked. And this poacher actually did a really nice job plucking it. But yeah, so that bird was seized as evidence, and he was charged with that, and went through the whole thing. So yeah, so the turkey sign, as far as hunting goes, though, I mean, you can tell a lot of information. Another thing you're looking for are strut marks, and if you look on that, and as a turkey is in strut, like in sand or snow, sometimes you'll see it in mud. Snow and sand is really the popular one, and if you see those turkey track and a squiggly line on each side of it, you want to hunt that, because that bird is going back to that strutting spot, and they usually will find these spots and revisit them. So anytime you see a bird strutting or find these strut tracks or marks, you want to hunt that, because that bird may come back. And if you look here, I've got an actual turkey foot, and this is a gobbler. See the spur on that. But if you look at the toe, the center toe, 2.5 inches or longer, that is a really good indication of a gobbler. So large track gobbler, small track hen. I tell this story at the hunter ed classes, and also up at Williams. I was on a complaint and was talking to the complainant, and he was actually a friend of mine, and we were walking down his farm lane, and there were turkey tracks everywhere. It was a turkey highway. And and I made the joke, I'm going to call you when I get off duty tonight. He said, go ahead, Dan, you call me, because he knew where I was going with this after we were looking at all the tracks. And this is another thing to remember in the springtime. So I called. His name was Larry, and I called Larry and said, hey, could I turkey hunt on your property? And he says, absolutely. And I said, why? Does anyone else turkey hunt? And he said, no. And I said, well, why not? And he goes, no one's ever asked. So you got to get out, knock on doors. That's part of scouting, is getting a spot. Everybody, and there are some really good state land spots if you want to go that route. But a lot of people are willing to share property as far as turkeys. They're not as territorial over a turkey as a big rack.
Right.
So it just seems a little bit different. But yeah, so those, one last thing, if you can pull up the picture of the dust areas on so a turkey, and we actually my dad and I and my son were turkey hunting, and that same 2-track had sand on it. And a hen came in to our set, turned upside down in the middle of the road, and dusted itself. And so they will dust themselves because they have parasites on them, and it relieves the itch. So anytime you see a dusting area, you want to hunt that, because you'll see hens do this, I think, more predominantly than gobblers. I don't know why, but if there's a hen in the area, a lot of times there's going to be a gobbler. So be patient. But you want to hunt those areas. So that as far as scouting, I can't emphasize enough. So this last weekend on Sunday, when it was that beautiful day, I went up and did some scouting on some of the spots that I have hunting, that I have permission to hunt on, and did just what we talked about here. I looked for scratches. I looked for feathers. This feather right here I found, and this is this is a tail fan feather. So it's not going to be the most pretty fan, I would say, because it's missing one tip. But I am not going to pass up a bird just because he's got a chunk missing out of his tail fan. Okay, right. So that right there is a really good sign. So you want to go back. So do you think he lost that naturally, or do you think maybe he was out there fighting, or what's your take on why he would lose it from the tail fan? I think it was just what you said. They don't have these big spurs. Now look at that spur. That is a trophy Goliath spur right there.
That's a limb hanging spur.
That's a limb
yeah.
hanging.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That right there is a dagger. So he probably lost it fighting. You want to go back there anytime you start seeing feathers dropping, scratchings. especially scratchings. I mean, if you go back and hunt an area where they're feeding, they're more than likely going to come back. And what I like to do, so I use a doghouse blind. So kind of the next question is people will like, what style do you use? Because there's a few different styles in it. When I first started turkey hunting, we would do the run and gun. So we would call, hear birds, try and move in a little closer, get a response, and then see if we could get a bird to come in. The running and gunning is covering a lot of territory. In southern Michigan, sometimes it's a little bit hard to do with the property being all broken up. But guys still love doing it. They go out, they listen, they hear a gobble, and then they move to that bird a little bit and then set up and then try and call. What I like to do is do the scouting ahead of time and then take my doghouse blind out either that morning or the night before in preset areas that I know where I'm going to set that blind up, set it up, get everything all laid out there. So I just have to walk in and unzip the door and then set up. I like to use decoys. We can talk about decoys real quick.
Well, I tell you what, we're coming up on our first break. Why don't we take our first break and then we'll get into the setup and maybe talk about, did you roost the birds or what are you looking for as you're getting into that blind? How about that?
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so we got the scouting down. So we're going to take a break. We come back. Now we're going to figure out how to set up and kill the birds.
Let's set up and try to kill them, right?
All right, we're going to step outside. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Audio disclaimer. You may not hear some of the calling due to our guest's laptop's microphone having a noise gate. All right, everybody. Again, you got to listen and go back. If you're listening on the podcast, you got to watch the live stream or at least go to YouTube once we post the show or Facebook and watch, because in the breaks is when we have a lot of fun. So
that's right. We get talking in the breaks and you never know what can be talked about.
Yeah, Danny's trying to drown me over here.
Right?
We're talking turkey hunting, and now we're out on the ice.
Right. So as we went to the first break, we were talking about you getting out to the blind. In that, I brought up the sheet of how to start a morning spring turkey hunt. You want to follow that one?
Yeah, this is a great spot to start.
Okay.
So this is a really big question, because a lot of first timers. Now, when I talk at like Williams Gun Site, there are a variety of backgrounds. I mean, there are some really phenomenal turkey hunters that still come to these talks, because you can always learn a trick or two just by being around other experienced hunters.
Absolutely.
So how to start a morning hunt, I was getting this question, so I ended up just typing it out how I like to do it. And so if you look at that handout, go regardless of weather conditions. Okay, so I don't mean that as far as like if it's tornado weather. Okay, we're still using some common sense here. But if it's uncomfortable weather or weather that you would think like, well, I might not hear a lot of gobbling, I'm not going to go today. A lot of guys like hunting on. I mean, I love hunting on those perfect mornings where it's dead calm and you got a beautiful sunrise and the sun's coming up and got a nice blue sky. That is perfect. Not too cold, but go regardless of weather. I am not kidding you. We have killed some of the biggest, most dominant birds on bad weather days. Now, you may not hear them gobble as much. In fact, so we were hunting one time, and we were hunting a natural spot, no blind, but I had picked out this spot. It was in between a fallen log, and we put our chairs in there and put up a little camo net. And my dad was sitting on one side, and he was eating a sandwich. We didn't hear any roost gobbling at all. It was just blowing wind. And every time the wind went dying down, I would get on this call, and I'd really go crazy on this call. And I look over and I said to my dad, the professor, I said, "Hey, how's that sound?" And he looks right at me and he says, "Daniel, sounds like an excused overcall." And I was like looking at him. And so next time the wind died down, I just screamed on that call. And I'm not kidding you, no more than about a minute later, this bird fires up right out in front. And I don't know how it came up this hill. I had totally not expected that, to where this bird had come up. And I couldn't see it, but I could hear it spitting and drumming. And he looks over, and my dad wears hearing aids, so he said this abnormally loud, "Daniel, do you have a shot?" And I look over, and I go, "No, I can't." Boom! And he lets loose, and then I see the bird roll from behind this tree, and that's actually, there's a picture of that bird. We should have had that one weighed. It had the biggest, throatiest head on it, and it was a dominant bird, gobbled one time, and this was a little before 8 o'clock, so it made us wait, and we were just playing the wind. So every time the wind would die down, it would call a little bit, and then the wind would pick up, and so it was sporadic. So go regardless of weather. So even if you think it's not going to be a good turkey day, I mean, all these turkeys, they still got to come down, they got to feed. They only have a limited amount of time to breed, so get in the woods.
Okay, so a question coming in about that. You said that you were sitting there. The question is, do tom turkeys always fly down from his roost and travel the same path every morning? When
I would say no. I mean, we've hunted morning after morning, kind of sometimes in the same spots, and we hear. A lot of times you hear birds kind of roosted in the same area. They do like the same general areas, but he may not fly down exactly every time. I mean, you just never know. I mean, so on this ridge, we would walk up this ridge all the way up on the top, and these birds would fly down. They never would fly on the top of the ridge. They would fly down the ridge, and then we'd call them back up. Well, I got smarter. I said, well, hey, you know what? I'm sick of walking up that ridge in the dark 30, tripping over branches. Why don't we set up down here where they fly down? So we started doing that, and I mean, either way, it's just a matter of preference. But yeah, I would say no. I mean, you're going to see turkeys have familiar patterns.
Okay,
there's no doubt about that.
Okay, with that being said, besides patterns, do they have a certain type of tree that they go roost in? Is there something on that ridge that the tree that it's always?
So this is kind of the rule of thumb. They like heavy horizontal branches. Okay, it doesn't have to be a conifer. It doesn't have to be deciduous. So my son, we were sitting. This was actually the last day of his season, and I had packed all the gear, and I was telling him, just hang in there. We got one day. We'll do it. And he thought I was lying. He thought, oh, you just want to go out, Dad. You just want to call turkeys. You filled your tag, and which he was right. There's no question I wanted to go, but so we set up, and I'm not kidding you. We're sitting there in the dark, and you start seeing the ambient light, and all of a sudden, this bird fires up, and he looks out, and he was actually sleeping. He jolts up in his seat, and he looks out the window, and he goes, Dad, I see him. He's in a tree. He's in a tree right beside us. And so I put my face mask on, and I kind of peeked just real slow out the window, and here he is. He's about 50 yards down the way, just a little way, and he's on an oak branch that is this big around. So big he can strut all the way around on this branch and display. So he's displaying, and I was like looking at this bird like, wow, this is crazy how this bird is turning all the way around. And so so My rule of thumb is don't call before shooting hours. Don't call before. So I said, just let me know when he flies. And you hear this. He pitches off this branch. You hear. And he glides right down the ridge. So I let out a nice burst. And this bird came with two others, came right up 12 yards. And my son looks over, and this is actually his first bird. He goes, "Dad, you forgot to take my safety off." That was the only rule we had. I go, just let me. I'm gonna touch the gun one time, and I'm gonna take your safety off for you. Then you got the green light. It's all you. And I'm telling him, shoot. And these birds are walking right parallel, right out in front. He picks the middle one, and the earliest bird I have ever seen shot after legal shooting hours was his. And I saw a flame come out of that gun. And I was like, holy cow, that was exciting. And we were making a phone call to Mom by probably before 7 o'clock. It was crazy. So, yeah, a big horizontal branch is what they like. And they do kind of like to roost in the same areas. So once you start seeing a pattern there, you kind of try to want to get. This one was a little too close, I would say. We didn't know it was going to be that tight. But yeah, definitely you're in the game at that point. It makes it exciting.
And Jim Killer Miller himself asks, why do turkeys prefer to roost over water?
Oh, I think just because of food. Anytime you start seeing, so where I hunt, there's lots of water, and there's actually a creek going through, and then there's some little floodings out, and you hear. Anytime you start hearing chorus frogs or spring peepers, oh man, that is a day you want to be out there, because those birds are going to be on fire. The correlation, it's kind of like some days, if you're in your backyard, you hear robins and cardinals firing up in your backyard. Some days it's on, some days it's better than others. So yeah, those are the days you want to get out there. So I like to try and set up an hour before legal shooting hours. So if you look in the hunting guide, where did my hunting guide go? Oh, here it is. Look at the diagram there for the shooting times. I go by that if I'm hunting in the morning. So like on this year, April 23rd, 6:10 is the start time. Don't load your gun before that for safety reasons. It's against the law too. But I want to be there probably by about 5:15, 5:20 at the latest. I like to get out there before everything, so everybody settles down in the blind. You can kind of relax a little bit. You start going in early like that, or like late early. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Where you're a little behind schedule and you can bust birds. You'll scare them off the roost, and it's not. I wouldn't go home, that's for sure. But it's definitely nicer if you can get in there undetected. Don't use a light. So try and get in an hour before shooting time, and then get things set up in one of your prearranged area within 100, 150 yards, somewhere comfortable in there. Don't call before shooting time. That's probably one of the biggest things. If you like to call, try and hold back until it's shooting time. And then listen, look up. When you see that blue ambient sky and the branches and you see beehives, you're probably looking at roosted birds. Mm-hmm. So, get your face mask on, try to keep your hands and movements down to a minimum. Turkeys have such good eyesight, so just try and be aware of your own movements. And then I like to start out calling. So I listen first. You're listening for gobbles, wait for that shooting time, and then I do just kind of what they say, what everybody's always been taught. You kind of go soft at first a little bit, I call it echo calling. If you hear hens calling, mimic that hen. And if she's getting fired up, then you get fired up. Try and sound just a little bit more excited. So I'll just, I'll do some, just some real soft, we're going to go over a little bit more calling here in a minute, but just. And just listen. And if you hear, then sometimes I'll go even quieter to see if I can get a response. I'll try and call as quiet as I can to see if I get a response. When I go out when I'm taking my calls out, you'd want to try and master or at least get proficient. You don't have to be a stage caller when you're a turkey hunter to call in turkeys, but you want to be proficient in at least 3 calls. Okay, and so what I tell guys that don't like the mouth calls. Okay, so if you look here, everybody can run a box call. I mean, everybody can do a. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to, on the softness on those. Another great call, which I see I didn't set out, but hang on 1 second. Okay, push button call. These are really overrated. I mean, underrated. Don't let anybody fool you that these aren't good turkey calls. I can't tell you how many turkeys I've finished with this. So now I'm a friction caller. I just love looking at a nice call. I love looking at a call. I love the way it feels in my hand. I like the strikers. You can use all sorts of different strikers and come up with a different tone. And so what I like to do is take three of my favorite calls. I don't try and take so many that I'm having a garage sale, walking through the woods and dropping strikers and calls, and take enough that you can have a little diversity, but so you're not losing them. I watched a video of one of my buddies, and they're really into the filming. They love all this, and they're good at it. They film everything, the good, bad, and the ugly. Whatever happens out there, they film it. And they were running after a bird they shot, and he was losing. I saw a striker fly out of his vest one side, and then another call fly out of the other side. I'm like, oh my word, that's not the way you do it. But what I like to do is run a couple different calls and see what kind of response you get, because turkeys have different tones. It's like fishing. Some day they're biting on red, some day they're biting on white. So try a few different calls, and then mimic whatever you hear. So if you hear silence, you should probably be a little bit more conservative. When you start hearing turkeys calling though, and you'll start hearing a hen calling, and so that hen, she'll start calling, and she'll usually fly down first, and then you'll see the gobbler fly down. So don't be discouraged when you see that gobbler fly away, because he's probably eyeballing a hen that he watched fly down. So then your tactic is, I got to call to this hen too. And because these birds have hierarchies within the sexes. And so if you can agitate a hen, irritate a hen, a lot of times they'll come to your call. They will be curious and see what's going on over here, and they will drag a longbeard in. So be prepared for that. For me, I love the calling so much. Sometimes it's hard not to call, but you've got to remember, don't call on every gobble. Everybody loves to hear that response, and sometimes you gotta really resist. You gotta really resist it. And don't call on every gobble, because every time that bird gobbles, he's going into full strut, and he's stopping or slowing down. So you want to keep that bird moving towards you, and you know that that gobble is now pointed kind of your direction. Let him come. Don't call at every gobble. This is really hard to do. Master the silence. You got and another tactic which I like, which a lot of times people don't talk about. This really, I think, makes gobblers mad, and you got to time it. So when you hear I've gotten good at it. So when you hear a gobble, you call over the top of a gobble. I mean, right over the top. Here. And you just call right over the top of him. And for some reason, that really can sometimes get a bird pointing in your way. Last year, we hunted in the same location one weekend. I hunted one weekend with my dad, and we had a bird go parallel to us. And it must have been following hens, because I was calling, I was not calling, I was calling soft, I was calling loud, not calling. And this bird walked right on by. You could hear it gobbling. And I could tell my old man, he was looking over at me like, hey, what the heck, Turkey Whisperer? You didn't do it. And the next weekend, I took my hunter ed instructor friend, and that bird came on the same line, came from the same direction, gobbling. And this time, I changed the tactic because I heard a hen calling. And so I was calling really aggressive to the hen. And all of a sudden, 2 hens come out into the open. And this is actually, the property owner is a deer hunter. So he had made an artificial opening in the woods. And in the fall, or in the late spring, he plants some type of a clover in there for deer in the fall. And so it's an opening. So the birds like this opening area. And 2 hens came into this. And next thing you know, I said, George, I go, watch, there's going to be a gobbler coming in. There's going to be a longbeard. And sure enough, no more than I said that this longbeard came out into the opening, strutted, saw our decoys, and then sprinted towards us. And I was looking at George like, holy cow, you better be ready, because this bird is running. I mean, it was trotting, it was towards us. And he let it get, he shot probably 15 yards. And it was, probably one of the most memorable turkey hunts. But yeah, so that's how I like to start the morning hunt.
But Dan, you've had all the success. You've shot a bird real early. You have your friends shoot. You're hearing birds. But it's like 9 o'clock. Should I go in?
So what I didn't hear you.
So, you're hearing all these birds in the morning. You're letting your friends shoot them, your son shoot them. But I'm sitting out there. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm not seeing anything. Should I just go in and be done for the day?
Okay. So this was actually one of my. So there's lots of different styles. First of all, no. If you have the time, absolutely not. Okay. So this is the pattern. And I talked about this last weekend at Williams Gun Sights. This exact scenario. So there's a picture in our collection there of my dad and my son looking at some turkey eggs. Pull that one up. Okay, so that was a turkey hunt, I want to say probably between 5 and 10 years ago. And I want to say it was the 19th of April. It was the opener. And I want to say it was a Monday opener. That bird, okay, so turkeys in the springtime, they have a time frame that all this breeding has to take place. And they lay 1 egg a day. And so this was April 19th, and that bird had already laid 14 eggs by the opener. Okay, so another handout I want to talk about is the phases of spring. If you pull that up on and show that to the viewer.
You know what? Why don't we step? We're coming up on a break. Why don't we step out? We'll come back and we'll talk about that sheet, the phases of spring.
Okay, awesome.
All right, we're going to take a step outside. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back, third segment of the show, and we were just talking about the phases of spring. And Dan, go ahead and pick it up right where you left off.
Okay, so this picture, and Dan, what else were we talking about? I had something on my mind. I wanted
the turkey eggs.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll get to this phases in just a second. So on this particular hunt, we had a hen come in and literally sit down by the blind, and I looked, and it was on my side, and I said, Dad, I think there's a nest over here. And so we look over, and sure enough, she's okay. So a turkey will nest in a really, really dense area, and they make a small depression, a tiny depression in the ground, in the leaves. They sometimes will do it under a fallen log. This one did it under some tree branches that had fallen, and it was really dense. It was just, so she actually had crawled in there, nestled in, and then sat down, and then got real still. I mean, her camouflage was perfect. So after the hunt, of course, we got to take our blind down, so she flushes out of there. My dad, being the professor, goes over there, and actually on this particular hunt, I had arranged for the DNR photographer to come out. I had called him ahead of time and said, hey, what does it take to get on the hunting guide, or how do you do that? Is there a waiting list? And he goes, no, there isn't. I actually have a hard time getting sometimes people to volunteer. I said, well, I'd be thrilled. So my son and I and my dad on this particular turkey hunt had him along. So he came out. And so I'm actually in that photo. I actually have a saucer mirror. It's about the size of a saucer sled, like you'd see a kid's sledding on. And I'm holding it, reflecting the sunlight onto this nest. And then my dad's just carefully, without disturbing it, just counting that clutch of eggs. And he got to 14. So that bird, that hen will lay 1 egg a day until she's ready to incubate. And then once she has a full clutch of eggs, she will nestle down on that. Her body temperature and the ground temperature will incubate these eggs. And so they all hatch at the same time. So a lot of hunters, they think, oh yeah, well, the turkeys are henned up and this. So it happens very fast. As soon as Michigan turkey season starts, it's on. So that bird had already laid 14 eggs. They lay the average is between 8 and 12. Sometimes 15 is the top. So this one had 14. So she started laying eggs days ahead of the season, ahead of time. And so it's not going to be long where that bird commits to that nest, and then she won't leave. And this is where a lot of hunters don't understand. That hen does not fly up to the roost like normal anymore. It has got one job, and it's to get those eggs hatched all at the same time, approximately. So she will leave that nest very infrequently to feed real quickly and then come back and then nestle back down. So at that point, you have gobblers that do not have access to hens anymore. So within a very short time of that nest being on the ground like that, or the hen being committed to that nest, I mean, you're going to get gobblers that are lonely. So back to your question, should I hunt or leave around 9? George, my hunter ed friend, we were hunting, and it was 10 o'clock. And it was one of those mornings where it was warm, and I was actually falling asleep in my chair. And we had played cat and mouse. We were calling all morning to a bird. And then I'd call, this bird would gobble, and we were trying different things with this bird. And we had a lull in the action, and I had fallen asleep. And he nudges me, and he goes, hey, you want to go home? And I look at him, I go, George, no, it's just getting good. And I am not kidding you. Within 20 minutes, all of a sudden we got a longbeard right out in the decoys. And we had set this blind up right on this edge. So this bird would come out into the field and then go back into the edge. It would come back out into the open and then go back. It did about 3 times, and I'm wondering, what the heck is going on? Is he ever going to shoot this? Well, about the 4th time it comes on, I'm like, are you going to shoot? And he finally shoots. Well, then he's like, well, we're driving home. He's like, yeah, I got to get my second cataract surgery this week. I didn't even know he was like halfway blind. No wonder he couldn't. Here I am thinking, what the heck is going on here? And he's having a vision problem. So I mean, so I got to give my Hunter Ed friend a little a break there on the vision thing. But yeah, so you want to hang in there. Also, before I talk about this phases, so I also have on that other sheet how to start a turkey hunt at all other times, and this is just what you looked at between 9 and 3 o'clock. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I think is probably your best turkey hunting time out of the whole day. Even into the evening is good. I mean, they give you the time, so why not take advantage? I mean, I've shot birds at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So you go out to your pre-scouted areas and you set up. And we were going to talk about decoys real quick. So before I talk about the phases here one more time, I just want to talk about decoys and decoy safety. So if you look at decoys, and now the decoys are becoming so realistic. I mean, they're coming up with some fantastic decoys. So this Jake decoy is a feather flex decoy. And I actually had put a piece of paracord through there with a washer on there, so I can carry it easy, so I don't have to crush it. And this has the iridescent paint. If you look right here, this was from a turkey hunt where a gobbler got too close to decoy, and that's a shotgun wad right in the tail. And I looked at that and I said, wow, that's good luck. I'm gonna keep that in there. That decoy wad's that shell wad has been in there probably 15 years. This decoy is a vintage 1998. So this decoy has seen some turkey hunting, and so all I've done on this is take some paint, and when the paint peels off of it, just repaint it. And these wattles are a piece of cloth I sewed on there, so you can fix up your own decoys. But so for decoy safety, let's talk about this just for a quick second. All you have to do, okay, and this is a must, and you see people making this mistake because they don't think it's going to happen to them, and there's a good chance it won't. But you want to make sure you carry hunter's orange on your decoys. Okay, an easy way to do that, and on your shot bird, and there's a picture in our thing there of some hunter's orange on a bird we're carrying out that has some hunter's orange on it. This is a really big deal. So I had been retired from being a DNR conservation officer for 1 year last year, and there was a turkey hunting accident in my county. And my partner told me about this. I won't elaborate on a lot of the details. Public property. A subject was carrying a dead bird over his shoulder, like you see everybody doing. Another hunter mistakenly shoots him, thinking that there is just the turkey and no hunter carrying the bird. This right here, so this is flagging tape. You can get this at Lowe's, any hardware store, Home Depot, just a carabiner, and you can put this over your decoy. And that's why I like these little pieces of paracord, because I can carry that decoy, and there is going to be a lot of distraction between that and somebody thinking that's a real decoy. So think safety. Now when you're setting up, people are like, well, do I set a strutter up, which is this guy? Sorry for going out of camera view there. And the fan isn't on it, but this is a strutter we use. This one's actually by Primo's, and this is actually a fantastic decoy because it has on the back here, the fan actually has a weight. So when this fan is up, it actually can blow into the wind and looks like a real turkey fan. It's I sometimes am amazed by it. Okay, so for decoy setup, I'm going to give you my setup, and I show pictures of it, and I'm using this more and more. I have a hard time deviating from this. Okay, so you always set your Jake decoys or your strutting decoys closest to you, because a dominant bird or even a Jake is going to come right to the strutter, is going to come to your decoy to fight it. And so that's why you set that close up to you. So like when we set our doghouse blind up, you set your decoys at a 45-degree angle. You never set your decoys straight onto you. Okay, so if somebody were to shoot at your decoy, it would go to the right or to the left of you instead of right down the barrel of you. Okay, so think safety. Set them off to the sides just a little bit. With a 12-gauge shotgun and the shot now, I want to talk about shot, so I'm going to put that right there. A 12-gauge shotgun has, you always want to think within shooting a turkey within 40 yards. That's the goal with a 12-gauge shotgun. With a 20-gauge or 410, you're going to have to go a little closer. Regardless of the shot and how much you practice, an ethical shot with those lower gauges, you should probably be a little closer. Practice before you go out. Shoot paper. But back to the decoys. So set those decoys. I like to set my decoy between 12 and 20 yards. Right in there, 10 to 20 yards to the right or the left, and I put the Jake closest to me. Now what I like to do is with the hen decoy, I have all sorts of decoy stakes. What's awesome about these feather flex decoys, these inexpensive decoys, is everybody's going to the high dollar ones, which are awesome, realistic looking, which leaves me to get all their decoys at every garage sale I can find for $3 for a half dozen, you know. So my wife has free reign. She doesn't even have to call. I told her, I quit telling her to text me every time she finds turkey stuff. She has the unlimited right to purchase any, without me looking at it, anything turkey related. She just buys it at any garage sale she comes across. So I have a bunch of decoy stakes. I take one of these short ones. I put this hen decoy on the ground. They actually make a decoy, a breeding set. So you make a breeding set. You put this hen decoy right on the ground like this. And then I will put, now this kind of goes against, and if you're setting just a Jake decoy up, then you would set that closest. But I will set this Jake decoy on a stake right beside it, so it looks like it's right over the top of it, like this hen is submitted for breeding. So it's a breeding set. And you can see that in the pictures. I can't tell you how much turkeys hate to see that. A hen low on the ground like that with a Jake decoy, or when we've done it with both sometimes. So the rule of thumb on a strutter, on a strutting decoy, if you see birds, like as you're traveling to and from your turkey hunting spots or to and from work, if you see birds in full strut, that kind of gives you the green light to set a strutter up. If you're early in the season, you can kind of set the strutter up. So there's a big debate. When do you stop putting the strutter up? So you see here guys in like late May. Well, I quit using my strutter. I'm using a Jake decoy. The one thing, if you commit to this bird, this dominant bird in your decoy set, you have to be willing to pass up a younger bird, okay? And so that is good, because that full strutter could actually scare off a Jake.
Especially if in the season that Jake has come in and gotten its butt kicked before.
Oh, yeah.
Right. He'll be like, you win, I'm leaving.
Not again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it can go either way, because one morning we had, I had set this strutter up and we had a young bird look at it and not come in. And it wasn't because of anything that we did or didn't do. It was just because it had gotten clobbered and it wasn't going to do it again.
Right, exactly.
So you have to be okay with that. That's what I'm saying, I guess. If you're a first time hunter or you're willing or you want to shoot jakes, I've shot plenty of jakes, so I'm not saying I'm not a jake shooter, but if you're hunting a dominant bird, it's probably going to be fine. But if you're not willing to pass up a jake or you want to shoot a jake, you might have to be willing to have that bird get scared off.
Is there any instances where you wouldn't want to put decoys up?
Public land sometimes. Public land, I would say sometimes it might be sketchy. Excuse me, I need to drink water here.
Well, I would agree with that on public land, because I've been on public land, and I've heard the Energizer Bunny of calling to nature walkers, to people walking their dogs. It's just you're on public land. I get it, but I've been there, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. So, just have fun with it, but always be prepared. Hunt defensively, and when we go over the common mistakes, that's one of the mistakes is setting up an area that you don't have good visibility, and that is not just for your own hunting, but for defensive hunting, so you can see a hunter. If you do see a hunter, I watched a turkey video where a hunter encountered another hunter, and he did probably one of the biggest mistakes. So you don't wave, you don't use a turkey call. So this hunter used a turkey call to try and get this hunter's attention.
Whoops.
Really bad mistake. So this is what you do even if you're hunting private property, you just never know if someone's going to wander on to that property by mistake or intentionally. You call out in a clear voice, "There's a hunter here." I always carry hunter's orange in my pack. It's a really good safety thing to put on. It's sometimes I don't necessarily wear it when I'm walking around, but if you need to get somebody's attention, it's good to have, and you can never go wrong. I'm a duck hunter too, and I carry hunter's orange when I'm duck hunting because there's other hunting seasons. So the phases of spring, just real quickly, this sheet right here, the phases, this is for the northern states, and it kind of breaks down like what the birds are doing by date, and then below it will give you what to do as a hunter. So our Michigan season is usually between, this says April 19th to May 3rd. That's the start time. We're well into our season by May. But if you follow this, you kind of have a really good framework on how to call, what to do, what kind of tactics. It'll give you the tactic under each phase. So this is a great sheet to review, a great sheet to review. I guess I'd like to get into some calling.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's take our last break, and we'll save the rest for the end of the show. So,
okay, sounds good.
So we're going to step outside real quick, take our last break, and then when we come back, we'll get back into the calling. All right. We'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
All right, we're the last segment of the show. We're gonna bring everything home here.
Right, we've talked about when to hunt, how to do a morning hunt. Hunt all day, folks, if you're allowed. Some states you're done by 1 o'clock. So obviously, if you're listening in other states, check your game book when you can hunt and when your end times are. But here in Michigan, we can hunt all day. And like Dan has said, he shot birds late in the evening, and I have as well. But, one of the things I brought up the sheet that I have up on the screen now is the types of calls. So why don't you go over the 4 basic turkey calls that you should know?
Okay. So regardless of the call you like, and so I'm a friction caller. I just like the way a box call looks. I have them. I have mouth calls, but the drawback on some of the calls, so some of the pros and cons. The mouth call, awesome, hands-free. The guys that can do it are phenomenal, usually phenomenal. I mean, I know some guys that can make those calls sing. They sound like real turkeys. For me, to hold that call in my mouth for an hour or whatever, I start to gag on it every once in a while. Or you got, when it's real cold out, So I mean, that I guess it's up to you. I like slate or the pot calls and the push button, and then I like the box calls. I use those box calls a lot for real windy days because these calls can reach out in range. And so the 3 calls that, or the 3 notes that you have to really kind of learn to be a successful hunter. I mean, you can do a yelp. So there's the yelp, cluck, and I like cutting. And then if you're gonna get kind of a specialty one, the purr, and that we'll go over that. So the yelp is a 3 to 15 note series, and it's where are you? Where are you? And a hen will do that, saying where are you? Now gobblers will yelp too, but in the springtime it denotes interest. And so on this, so this is a crystal call. The one thing with calls, especially if you're going to use box calls or pot calls, is you want to condition that call. So you take a piece of automotive Scotch-Brite. You can get this stuff anywhere. Automotive Scotch-Brite, just like that. And you cut off a little piece. And so I cut off a piece that's not so small where if I drop it, I can't find it, because that's annoying. And then you rough up that spot on the call, and you do it in the same direction. Now this call, or this Scotch-Brite with the notch in it, I will only use on a true slate call like that, because you don't want slate or this chalk material going in a crystal call. So that's why it has a notch. So in the dark I can say, okay, that's the wrong Scotch-Brite pad. So rough up the call, and then rough up the pad or the actual striker. And you don't want to sand it. And I actually have I don't see it here, but the Scotch-Brite works too. But I actually have a tiny little, it's almost like a filing deal for your fingernails. And you just rub that, you circle that on that, and that will take any oil or debris off the tip of that. So here's a yelp, just like this. And so you would take this and just, and when you're caught, so that's a little slower yelp. It's all about cadence. It's all about cadence. So here's a little bit more excited. And then you always run these notes together. So here's a cluck, and a cluck is a short. It's a reassurance call, but it means come here, and it's just a single note, and it sounds like this. And a lot of people, well, I don't like clucking because it's alarmy. Well, a putt is an alarm call that a turkey will make, and it's really different. It's put, 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 and you'll usually see that head come straight up, and it'll be spaced out a little bit. So a cluck and a yelp together. So here's a yelp and a cluck. And so you run those together. If you make a squeak, you heard one there, keep calling. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes. Turkeys, We had a gobbler. We called him sore throat. His gobble was horrible. And you would have thought, wow, he's a really bad turkey caller. He can't even make that gobble sound like a gobble. But so they all have individual tones and voices. So, I mean, if you listen to that tone versus...
Well, that's one of the things, right, Dan, is when you're out there doing these, and to be a little different is okay, because that could give the appearance or the thought.
Oh, absolutely.
More wild turkeys, more hens.
Absolutely.
You don't sound like that mechanical, the same one every time. And then that's another hint that you've given is change your pitch, change it different, because today might not be the same as 25 minutes from now.
Yes, and vary the volume, and you can really fool a turkey sometimes. So like mid morning, if we're not getting any hits, any birds coming in, sometimes another tactic other than the run and gun is to move a short distance away from the blind, call, move a short distance farther, call, and then come back to the blind. I can't tell you how many times we've called birds in because a turkey will range 4 to 5 miles on average, and that's not even your athletic turkey. Your marathon turkey, he could be training. He could be really training to cover some ground, but the average turkey will cover 4 miles a day. So, I mean, they are constantly moving, I mean, think about that. 4 miles in a wooded environment in fields. I mean, that's a lot of walking. I mean, but here's that other tone on this box call. Real sharp. It's real sharp. And sometimes, so this isn't my first call for a box call. I'll usually use this Roadrunner. What's that one's called. And later on, I'll start playing with that one with a little sharper note and see if I can get a response. So yelp and a cluck, and then here's cutting. And cutting is an erratic single note, sharp clucks, and it's real fast and loud. It is for companionship, and it's really erratic, and it sounds excited. So it's just... And if you can get that one down, and you can do that on a push button. So a lot of times if I'm calling for somebody, I have the luxury. I don't have to switch to any. So if I'm hunting and I'm actually having my gun near me, and I will always have my gun lapped. I always have my gun on my lap, and I will run the call like this. And when we talked about the mouth calls, this is the other thing that I like about these calls is you can hold them out. You can project the sound. Mm-hmm. Like, so you can turn around and call out a window, look around before you just start sticking your hand out the window. But I mean, you can project this call in different ways, which I really like to do. Where the mouth call, every time I use a mouth call, it really, all I hear is that call right in my ear. It's just really sharp. It's the great finishing call, though. These push button calls, you can do all the calls. I mean, you can do yelps, clucks, cutting, and you can move this call different directions, and it can sound different distances just by moving it around and holding it. Bad weather days with friction calls, I'll take a Ziploc bag, put my calls in a Ziploc bag, and that's when I really narrow down. And I have some calls that I've like, okay, this is a call that I don't mind if it gets wet. Some of these calls I would really be disappointed if I ruined it. But you put in a Ziploc bag, you get right in the center of that blind, and you can use that call a lot of times on a bad weather day where you're in the game. And that's why I do like the blinds. I know a lot of hunters now that are retreating or not using the blind. They're like, oh, that's too easy. the blind makes it too easy. Well, I'm not to that point.
Right?
I'm not to that point. I like the comfort of it. I like the concealability. I like being able to like move and like, okay, I'm going to have a snack now, where if I'm just sitting on one of the, actually, oh, it's right here. Sitting on one of these, okay, you got 15 minutes. My butt's got 15 minutes on this. Till my one leg is asleep or something. I mean,
Right?
You know, and here's the other thing I like to mention real quick. Okay, so this is something that you got to take real serious with sitting on the ground. Okay, I like sitting on a chair, and Dan, you saw the chairs that I had. There's some Cadillac really nice chairs, but it keeps you off the ground and ticks. This is Sawyer's, and you put this on your clothes. Follow the directions on this. Just don't spray. This is not for your body. This is for your hunting, like your pants and stuff. But the tick thing, you want to prepare for that.
Absolutely. Because right now, as you're talking about the ticks, we're putting up the 2021 Michigan Lyme Disease Risk Map by county. So if you people are watching the show, if you're listening on the podcast, go back to the show and check this map out. But it kind of gives you a color. They show in red where there's counties in Michigan with known risk for Lyme disease.
And that's an old one, so they make sure you go online and look at the updated one.
That is the updated one. I went in and printed it out.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Another thing that I like, in the early season you don't see too much problem with this, but if you're using a thermocell in that May close to June time frame, these are really invaluable for comfort as far as mosquitoes go. Another I wanted to talk real quickly just on the purr. So one call on the purr. So this is a contentment call, and I love using this as a finishing. So if you got a bird coming in and he's hot, and you can just real softly that right there, and then be ready. Put your call down and be ready. So that is a contentment call, and you can do that. So when I'm hunting with my dad and I want to overcall, and so he's telling me not to overcall sometimes. So I've actually got a cluck and purr pot, and this is just for clucking and purrs, and it's real soft. So if I feel like I just want to, I don't know if you can hear that.
Just
barely. When you're doing that, that's one of the things. It's a soft purr that you give out that's nice and quiet. But
yeah, this is money. This one is really nice.
But out in the woods, that sound travels a long distance.
Yeah, so that's a really fun call. I like wing flap sometimes, and this is just fun. Early in the morning, sometimes you don't even have to call. You just, or you can take your hat off and do the same thing. And this is a homemade one. You just, after you harvest a turkey, you take some of the wing feathers and you take some electrical tape. They sell these for like $20. You can make one of these so easy.
You can make a bunch of them if you get a turkey.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this one is all ratty, and I like it better. Another tactic you can use in your blind is scratching on the ground like a feeding, and just real light scratches. Sometimes that, if you want to try different things, go to that. We didn't really cover locator calls, and I think
if you do a couple locator calls, and one of the questions was why all this calling, locator call or all this calling. Have you ever called in anything other than what you're after? Have you called in any predators or anything like that?
Okay, so I love a barred owl call. And you can use this all day long if you want. It's great for in the early morning. And I can't tell you how many owls I've called in. I mean, you because it's breeding season for owls. That's why they're talking to each other. And so this call in the springtime startles a turkey to shock gobble. And so it gives his location away. You're not actually calling him to you with this call. You're just getting him to gobble, tell you where he's at, and then you either you set up or you try and move a little bit, or however you want to do your hunt. That's where you go with it. But so this call is just who cooks for you, who cooks for you all, and then you can put a little roll in it to make it sound a little bit nicer. And where they really gobble, I find, is if you do the laugh on it. You go, and you'll hear barred owls, and they call that a laugh. So it's and I mean, this is just a fun call to blow. I remember when I first got this, we didn't hear a turkey, and we set up, and it was so dark, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to blow this just to see if I can get one to gobble. And we knew we had birds around. I was just playing around. Blew that call. One gobbles it. It's like, oh, dark 30. I'm like, holy cow, this is nuts. He really shot gobbled to that. Another thing I wanted to mention real quick, carry a rangefinder with you if you're going to set your blind up, you're hunting fields or whatever. Invaluable. And I like to, with my decoy stakes, so yellow is for my range marker, and I will take a decoy stake and I will put it at the farthest range. So my son, he's like, hey, can you put one of those out for me about how we did it at the range? I said, absolutely. So I actually took a range or one of these stakes with the yellow marker on it and put it out to the range where he felt comfortable. I said, okay, Tommy, anything within that, your money, it's all you. And it just gave him so much confidence. And so we had a bird come in, passes are, they're not gonna see anything like, I mean, they're not gonna care about that. And walked right by the range marker, boom, down goes Gobbler. We're on the board.
There you go. And you know what? We talked about setups and shooting the birds, but there's kind of one little more important thing above all that you probably should do after you kill the bird.
Yeah, we're talking about tagging. And this is a really big pet peeve of mine, because this is how really unethical turkey hunters, I wouldn't call them hunters, how they cheat. Okay, so not tagging a bird is poaching, and this is a bad deal. Okay, because this is how guys are doing it. And I've seen it lots and lots of times where a guy will go out, hunt, harvest a bird, not even validate the tag. He'll have the tag available, but he won't put it on the bird. Oh, I was just going to tag it. Okay, so on the tag, it gives you the instructions on the back. Immediately after killing, after the dust settles, I'm not saying you have to run out there while it's... Okay.
Watch your tag fly away.
Yeah. After everything's calmed down, and I mean, let's be reasonable a little bit. Take your tag out. Don't use a knife, okay? You can see on the video on this one. So this is one of my tags. So you can see the notches. That's defacing this tag. So I have followed the instructions, and I punched out the day and the month. And then this one this is a paper tag, so this one came in on e-license. So this one has the weapon that was used. So take a pair of scissors, notch that, make a nice triangle on it. Just like that.
You know what? When you hold that up to the camera, you can visibly see all the notches that are in that tag, which gives, if you're checked, the CO can visibly see it really quick. Doesn't have to do microscopic.
It's not the knife cut on the tree. Okay, so if you don't have a scissors, that's acceptable. But if you're planning ahead, take a pair of safety scissors out. This is just a first aid scissors. Put them in your pack. Validate the tag correctly, and then take a zip tie, a cable tie. I don't see I had one laying here. Well, you can see this one, and then zip tie it to the bird's leg, and then that is correctly tagged. That way, when you take pictures, you'll see in all my pictures that bird is tagged. Oh, here it is, right here. Take one of these. It doesn't have to be orange. You can use a black one or whatever. But use a cable tie, and then that way a conservation officer or another law enforcement officer can take that zip tie off and look at your tag. If you buy the tag at the store and it has the sticky back, okay, so the correct way is they tell you in the guide to fold the tag over itself, and they would put a string, or some guys use wire. You don't even have to put the cable tie in the middle, okay? Fold it over on itself, validate it like this one is. You can see that one's validated. This one I didn't fold over because it's actually easier to read if you don't fold it over, and then you can just wrap it around the bird like this and take a cable tie, zip tie that to it, and you're good to go. And then an officer can look at that and go, perfect, thank you. That is A+ on your tagging. Super important to do that right. You see lots of people not do that right. Why not? It's simple. Take the effort. You've gone to all the effort to do everything else. Carry all these calls, practice, sight your shotgun in. Take the time to tag the bird correctly. It's the law. It's what you're supposed to do. It's the ethical thing to do. Do what's right when no one's watching. And that's validate it, deface your tag correctly, put it on the bird, and you're good to go. And
now,
make sure the tag stays with the bird until it's processed.
One thing that we hear a lot online, and we see people talking about it back and forth, and I'm a firm believer, you tag before you take pics. That way it's always in the pic. There's no question of whether you tagged your animal or not. What does the law say?
I didn't catch the last word you said. Tag before you take pictures or pics. Oh, absolutely.
Online.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if you here's how I read that. Okay, so immediately means before you start taking photos of it. Is someone gonna? Here's the issue. Someone could see that online and then report you. I've had this happen lots of times where someone takes a picture, there's no tag on it, and then we have to go talk to that person. Mm-hmm. Or when I was a conservation officer, I would have to go talk to that person about that animal not being tagged correctly at the time, because that wasn't immediate. I mean, you had the time to get your phone out, pose,
upload it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically, let's just get down to common sense. It says immediately, so do it immediately. Don't take the 2 minutes that it takes to properly tag the bird, and then take all the hero shots you want.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll thank yourself. It'll cause less grief for you, especially if it's an honest mistake and you're trying to do the right thing, and then you get wrapped up in that. So
and it saves a knock on the door, and there's a guy out there with a CO hat on.
So I had one where someone had they had taken the photo, and it was found that hunter didn't have a tag for that year, and it was on the internet, just like our show is going to be on the internet forever. So I went to the house, and I'm looking at the photo. In the background, the foliage is all different, and I'm like, this is right where the photo was taken, but it's the wrong time of year. I mean, and so I asked the guy. He goes, "Well, that photo was taken 3 years ago." I'm like, problem solved. Have a nice day. But I could see that. I could see that it, in my complaint that it wasn't matching up, and so there was no violation. But it was on the internet, and somebody saw that. So what he did was, I think it was, let's see your archery killed animal, and it was for turkeys. So he posted that, but he didn't. He shot that 3 years ago. He just was posting it because someone said, "Hey, post us your archery pictures," and he had one. And he's like, it was funny because he was building a deck. He's like, I haven't had time to hunt at all. I'm like,
right?
Oh, that's too bad.
You know, and here, you know, you had to do your job and follow up on it, but it's just like, if you know, take the time, save all the heartache, and just, you know, so I don't know about you, but I think we've pretty much covered it from A to Z.
A to Z. Yep.
And Z being, make sure you tag your bird.
Yeah, actually, we've ran a little long tonight, and I think we've kept Dan up for quite a while tonight. So we appreciate you. We appreciate you talking with us tonight, and
hey, thanks for having me.
Taking us on the adventures. You know, just hang on. Once we get done here, actually, before we do go, are you on Facebook?
Well, so I know Dan asked that, and with my former life, no.
Okay.
I wasn't.
But,
okay.
So anybody out there, if you've got any questions you want to propose to Dan,
post them here in the chat on the show, on the live stream.
Or message us, and then we'll text them, and we'll get the answer back to you. Or maybe I'll find where Dan is, and we'll do a live thing or something. I don't know. We'll find out how he's doing during this turkey season.
So last week we had that. We had a person that came to the talk, and he had a follow-up question. And he contacted the coordinator that invited me up for NWTF. And so he sent me a text, hey, could you call this gentleman? He had a question. So I happily called him. So,
there you go.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, go through the hosts here, and they'll get a hold of me, and we'll get your question answered.
There you go.
So
sounds good. Well, hang on, and after the show here, we'll chat real quick. But for those of you who listen out there on iTunes, make sure you go over and give us a review on iTunes. It helps us and helps the people who help us, our sponsors and our supporters. Also, if you're, like I said before, if you listen to the podcast, you got to go check out the live stream, because in the commercial breaks is when we have a lot of fun.
That's right. And if you don't check it out on Facebook, check us out on YouTube. And if you check us out on YouTube, remember to subscribe, because that kind of helps us to get to our number that we want to reach eventually. And then next week,
who we got on?
We're going to start talking. We're going to talk a little fishing next week.
Little fishing or big fishing?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to have a charter captain from the Saginaw Bay area, and he will be on next week, probably talking about walleye.
So we're talking about some big water.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Remember, give us a like, follow, share here on Facebook and our other social media outlets, and share the show if you would. That'll do it for us this week, and we'll be back again next week, same time, same place. Y'all take care now.
This episode was brought to you by
PSC Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Packer Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.